Welcome to the Republican Professor. This morning we have with us Dr. Keith Buhler. And joining us from Texas, we have famous Curtis from his mansion with all those books. And I'm in frozen California. And Keith is in California too, right?
I am. And Lord have mercy on us all.
Amen.
Yes. Did you start your sentence with I am? Is that how you introduced yourself? Because I'm like a little scared with that beard. I'm a little bit like nervous. Like, okay.
We're going to learn.
By the grace of God, I am what I am. That's Paul. So I can say that.
All right. I was waiting for fear not or something. And then since you didn't say that, I was like, okay, that's a good sign, actually. So
I am trying to convince my students. They have this strange belief. They've read the New Testament. They've read up in the church. They have this strange belief that we can't be united to Christ, that we can't be so closely identified to Christ that we can say our Father, as in God is the Father of Jesus Christ, and I can call him my Father. That's union. And they think that I'm claiming to be Jesus, and I'm like, look, I'm not claiming to be any more Jesus than you are.
Yeah. Ooh, a close reading of the Lord's Prayer already.
That's good.
It's amazing how important those pronouns are. Let's just go right to pronouns, shall we? No, just kidding. Well, Keith, Dr. Buhler, we're so grateful to have you on this podcast. We're honored that you're here. And I don't know you as well as I would like to know you, but that's part of the reason and part of the wonderful thing about doing a podcast like this is that
I know you from your posts primarily on Facebook. I don't even know how we got connected originally. But
yeah, I don't know either, actually, but I just kind of figured that you were one of Chalky's students that I had as a TA, but then I realized I think I just knew a bunch of students around Biola, and I think I must have met you somewhere sometime at some point.
And I'm a simple man. Facebook recommends, somebody, and then they're friends with all these Talbot guys, and I click accept. I'm a simple man.
Well, Buhler, you are now a principal. Is that correct?
Yeah, we call it the old title Headmaster. But yes, I founded, co-founded, and am running a new classical Orthodox Christian academy here in California.
Wow. Awesome. What's the name of it?
It's called St. Andrew Academy.
St. Andrew. Okay.
Yeah, we currently serve about 90 students within our parish and a few surrounding parishes. We don't have a public website or advertising or marketing because we are still in the process of a building project for the church. And so, we've just committed to the city. Look, we're sticking to our people right now. We're not going to increase traffic patterns or something like that. But it's been a blessing. We have about 90 kids. We do a full K through 12. We launched with a K through 12 program just 7 months ago, and it's been amazing.
Are the kids equally distributed among the 90 in terms of the grades? Is it?
It's not. It's about 50% K through 4, young ones, and then about 50% 6 through 12. I have 3 seniors, 2 juniors, and about 15 freshmen and sophomores.
Wow. The potential for growth is there. Wonderful. In Riverside. Awesome.
And that's with no advertising. So there's some homeschool families out there, people that are enrolled in maybe the local Catholic school or the local Protestant private school, who are probably salivating for what we're doing, and they just don't know about it yet. And we haven't told them about it yet. So I'm expecting a bump whenever we do finish our building project, and we're able to advertise a bit.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of people salivating for that in California. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not like the big pitch. The big pitch is our academics and our Orthodox Christianity, that we're living Christian lives together on campus while learning. But it's a nice side pitch to say we haven't had masks at all, like ever. Like it's never come up. If someone's sick, whenever they want to wear a mask, or if they're worried about someone getting sick. We have had COVID go through like everybody else, Omicron. but
How
which just
many
hasn't been an issue.
people died as a result of that going through?
So far, like if you count grammar school faculty, board members, 0.
Now, are you rounding up or um,
I'm
you're
that's
rounding
rounding
down,
up
aren't you?
slightly.
Okay.
That's rounding up slightly from less than 0. Yeah.
Well,
It just hasn't been an issue.
I almost
so.
wore a mask today just because I'm very concerned about you. And I felt a little bit under the weather earlier this morning. When I got up, I felt tired
Thank you.
before I had my coffee.
Oh, that's one of the
So,
Omicron
yeah,
symptoms.
well, yeah, I know. And I thought I really should be wearing a mask for the podcast today.
I am wearing my earbud very close to my face. And so whatever kind of germs are coming through, I don't understand technology, but it's probably dangerous.
I'm aware of that. I noticed that right away, and we have a filtering system here. I was mainly worried about you because let me just explain something about me. I care about people, and I really am a selfless person. So I was just worried about you and your situation and what can I do to help you?
Thank you for wearing your mask in your car by yourself on long drives. For the rest of us, you're doing something. You are kind of like Jesus. You're making my point.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more controlling than he is. I don't think he cared about people. I'm not sure he really cared about people as much as his reputation, because otherwise he would have controlled people a little bit more. He would have said, you're price gouging. You're price gouging on the fish.
As perfect as Jesus was, he leaves some things to be desired, like, for example, more tyrannical control of other people's behavior.
I agree.
Really let people do their thing. And that wouldn't work in today's woke society.
Well, give unto God's what's God's, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Is there a difference? I mean, let's just, maybe he was being coy there, I guess, but
it's good he came when he did. I mean, if he were here today, it'd be really tough.
Well, let's give some of Keith's background. The interesting thing about Dr. Buhler is, from my perspective anyway, is that he is in K through 12, running a K through 12 operation. And he went through all of the training that you would normally go through to teach college. So you went to, tell us about your academic background. You went to Biola, you studied.
I studied humanities and focused on history, but I took some philosophy there. And of course, was exposed to the history of the canon, the Western canon, including all the philosophy that we read in philosophy programs. I was exposed to that in a great books honors college. It's now the Torrey Honors College. So I didn't know that what I loved was philosophy. I knew that what I loved was the discussion and the arguments and the back and forth. Even in history, my favorite class was historiography, which is the philosophy of history, essentially.
You took a class on that?
I did, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Dr. Boos, I believe. And so philosophy kind of, eventually found its way into my vocabulary. But after graduating, I did not know what I wanted to do, worked odd jobs. And John Mark Reynolds, my professor at the time, said, you should get a PhD in philosophy and you can come work for me. And I was like, great, that's a vision for my life. And so it took a few years to actually apply. But once I got married, we applied to all these programs all over the country. The best offer was from University of Kentucky, where David Bradshaw was teaching and is still teaching. He's an Orthodox Christian philosopher. I was just becoming Orthodox, and I thought, hey, this would be great. The one thing, the nightmare stories that you hear from graduate students is always about their advisor, their dissertation, committee. It's never really about the students and the culture. Like, those things are like in the news. But you talk to graduate students and they're like, yeah, my friends are not going to crucify me because I'm a conservative or something like that. But if they know, yeah. And they might be surprised if they found out, right? Oh, you don't look like a reptile.
That's it right there, yeah.
But when I had the idea of like having a non-Christian or having a leftist dissertation advisor. I just thought, I don't know where that would go, you know.
What's Bradshaw's focus?
He's Aristotle and patristics. If you look
Okay.
at his recent stuff, it's all patristics, but his big book is Aristotle East and West, which I highly recommend to your academic listeners.
Aristotle East and West. Okay. Does it have pictures in it? Because if it doesn't have pictures, I pretty much throw it away, which is why I like the Orthodox, actually. You guys always have
That's right.
pictures in your books, but I wish you had
That's
more
right.
pie charts, honestly, and more facts, just like, scatter plots.
More science.
Science. I wish you guys listened to science a little bit more, but
Guilty as charged on that
now
one.
you
Yeah.
said you became Orthodox. Which heresies did you believe before?
I was raised sort of charismatic, non-denominational evangelical. And I don't know if I had any beliefs, let alone beliefs that could qualify as heresies, right? I was more in the relationship with God is about your emotional life, and not about your intellectual life, which I learned from J.P. Moreland, who's been a guest on this illustrious podcast. And I learned about, the spiritual life from beginning to do like meditation, silent meditation outside of the church.
Well, how
And
did you get
so-
involved with that? How did you get involved with silent meditation?
My mentor at the time and counselor was really big into meditation. He said, "You sound like your mind is scattered and distracted. Like maybe you should try meditation." I said, "What's that?" So he showed me how.
Was
I
this
gave
a
it a go,
private?
and I
Was
never
this like at the
stopped.
Biola Counseling Center, or where was this?
This was this is in Orange
I like
County.
the giggle.
Yeah,
The funny thing is that we have been a little sarcastic going back and forth, and maybe some people can't quite track
What's
what is a
sarcastic,
genuine
what's real,
what's
yeah.
a genuine question. That was actually a genuine question. I was like, because I'm actually learning about you, but I know enough about your sense of humor that you would enjoy some.
I did go to the Biola Counseling Center a couple times. I was just picturing my counselors there teaching you meditation, and it was a funny moment. Maybe we
It's
should
a
have
funny moment for me
a
too.
sarcasm hashtag. Yeah, sarcasm begins sarcasm now. Can you edit this?
There could be there could have been a very contemplative, John Coe is somewhere on campus, right? So
That's true. And I did not have the pleasure of taking John Coe's classes, but I talked to him about my experience with silent prayer, and yeah, he was very encouraging. So it was
really,
kind
I
of
mean,
like,
where did you find this counselor? Where did you find this? Was it a licensed counselor?
Yeah. So this guy's name is Dr. Robert Puff. So when I say I'm going to see Dr. Puff, I don't mean marijuana. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
But my family saw him for just, marital issues or parent-child issues that we were going through. And so he was kind of like in the inheritance for me. It was like, oh, you have to go see Dr. Puff when you turn 16. So I went and talked to him, and I was like an angsty teen, But I've actually kept up with him to this day. He was our premarital counselor. I listened to his podcast. He's a great thinker and a great. He's like a healthy person, right? So a great person to listen to about making your life more healthy. So it was him that showed me meditation, and that kind of led to this like refashioning of my whole like spiritual life. Was like I'm experiencing God, like I'm like feeling God's presence on a moment by moment basis in a way I never have before at church or in school or anything. And that kind of blew me away. Like I was going towards the the spiritual but not religious path after college, because I had been disillusioned with all the church fights. And I was like, I have my own connection with God. I didn't know that I was a bit proud and arrogant in that statement, but that's what I felt. And so when a friend invited me to the Orthodox Church, and it's got the history, it's got the contemplative spirituality.
What was this in? Was this in La Mirada that you went to the Orthodox Church?
My first visit was in Costa Mesa. St. Barnabas is the little parish out there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's where my wife and I were married, and that's where I became Orthodox. And we spent the first 2-3 years of our marriage there.
Oh,
How
cool.
far after Biola did you find yourself darkening the doors of St. Barnabas?
It was 3 years. was 3 years of a bit of wandering, reading, trying to self-educate, trying to go back to my home church, which is JP's church, the Anaheim Vineyard. But I couldn't go back. It was, the damage had been done.
I feel that struggle. I had a similar struggle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's truth in advertising with the St. Barnabas because it's Orthodox, and you show up and it actually is Orthodox. But with the
Yep.
vineyard, there's no vineyard there. Bunch
Oh,
of
God.
liars. You lied to me.
I went there my whole life. I never noticed that. The
Well,
absence of vineyard.
Keith, what year did you show up at University of Kentucky?
So that would be 2012.
Okay.
And
For
newlywed.
a PhD in philosophy? That's what you're
PhD
going
in
to do?
philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah, had a kid and had a fire in my belly. I was going to get this thing in 5 years. My wife and I did not really want to leave California because this is where both of our families are. So we busted our butts and did the program as quickly as I could. Enjoyed pretty much every minute of it. I have no complaints about my classes. People tell me, you don't learn in grad school, you just kind of go through the motions. And I was like, I learned a ton. I took classes and stuff I'd never thought about before,
I thought that was the point of going to grad school, was to learn. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Definitely.
Yeah, a bunch of people told me that. They were cynical. And working with David Bradshaw, making great friends that I'm still friends with. So there was, at the time, there was like 3 or 4 out of the 25 students were Christian, and that made a difference to have some community. So we came back in 2017. I did do a job run, a market run, which, as you know, is cruel and unusual punishment. I applied to some 40 odd schools, and I got a couple of requests for more information, things like that, but all the movements of the needle came from classical schools. That's where my resume, I taught for 5 years before grad school. I even taught in grad school at a local classical school. I was the principal for a year at this little startup that had, very few students. And so I was like, okay, this is the Lord's leading, I think. Academia has been great. In another market, maybe I would have gotten a job and I would have been happy with that too. But I really think I'm called to serve the classical education movement, classical Christian education. And so I went back to teaching for 4 years at a school in Santa Clarita, and then this opportunity to start a school at this church came up, and that's when we made the leap last July.
And you were in the Santa Clarita. Tell people where that is for people who don't know Southern California.
Yeah, so Santa Clarita, the way people normally refer to it is by Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Yeah.
It's right there at the tip of when the 5, when there's no more exits because you're going over the Grapevine. That's the Santa Clarita area right
just there. North of LA. Yeah.
I think the way the kids say it is, it's technically in LA County. And if you say technically, that adds something to it. Apparently, you can't just say it's in LA County. Because otherwise, I really don't know what you mean. What do you mean it's in LA County? But if you say technically, then I go,
veracity.
I got it.
The
Okay, I was missing the technical part.
Yeah, it is both not in LA County and technically in LA County. Like, these are both true.
It's not in LA City, but it's in LA County.
Yeah.
So
it's basically the Kentucky of California. I mean, it's way out there.
Yeah, and Kentucky is beautiful though.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find it to be beautiful there?
I did. I had a life goal because when I was homeschooled, I read a lot of books about the seasons, and I was like, what are these seasons? They're like, I live in California. We have summer, and then we have a little bit of rain, and we go back to summer. And so Kentucky fulfilled that life goal of living in a place with seasons. We got snow 3 out of the 5 years. The falls were just unbelievable. The horse farms, it's the bourbon. Kentucky is an amazing place.
And so do the Orthodox not mind if you say whiskey, that you drink whiskey?
The Orthodox have a principle that God is to be blessed for all of the fruits of his creation, right? Wine to make glad the heart of man. That's in the Psalms.
Praise
Amen.
God. I don't know why the holiness tradition, the so-called holiness tradition, according to Richard Foster in his Streams of Living Water, which I think is a nice way to learn a little church history if you never studied church history. He calls the tradition that I grew up in the holiness tradition. And the Baptist tradition is one of those traditions where, you don't cuss, definitely don't cuss, because that's a window into your dark soul. Or you don't want to have any alcohol. I saw you looking at the beer. I saw you lingering over at the beer section, and that's an indication there's some problems going on inside. But you guys over in the Orthodox, was that how you were raised? I don't know how Vineyard is. I don't think Vineyard is a holiness tradition. It seems like Vineyard
It's
is
not. I would say that that cussing definitely was looked down upon,
Yeah,
and drinking was something you didn't talk about if you did do it.
kind
So
of like Biola, basically. Then
it was kind of like Viola. My mom always
a little
said,
bit more
"Don't drink,
charismatic. Maybe.
don't chew, don't go with girls who do." That was like one of the things she learned. And I was like, I don't think there was ever a thing about gambling. Like we would have poker nights, but yeah. But interestingly, so Orthodoxy is like very aesthetic, right? So the word aesthetic is spiritual labor. That's what ascesis means in Greek. And it's the idea of fasting and what we call spiritual disciplines. And so I was reading in the Desert Fathers yesterday that there are monks who abstain from wine completely. But we basically view that as a voluntary giving up of a good thing, right? So fasting is, you don't ever fast from bad things. You don't like fast from adultery. Like normally I commit adultery, but during Lent, I'm giving it up. Fast.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What did you say
fast from-
ascetic meant again? It's ascesis in Greek?
Ascesis means spiritual exercise. It literally means exercise, but we don't use it for that anymore.
I don't
We
think
mean
I ever
spiritual
caught that
exercise.
when I took Greek. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was the aesthetic labor, not aesthetic labor, which would be working really hard to make something beautiful, I suppose. But so I think of wine, and if someone doesn't drink, like if a Baptist or Wesleyan or somebody doesn't drink, I think of that as an aesthetic labor. That's voluntary exclusion of a good thing, and that's to be commended. It's not obligatory though. That's the difference.
Right.
That's great. Okay, so alcohol is okay. We're basically just now doing like kind of like we're doing all things Keith Buhler here because there's so many aspects here. We could do the K through 12. I think we're just hitting all of it. When you were at University of Kentucky, had you ever heard of a guy named Craig Streetman who had been a student there?
I don't think so.
Okay. I forget what college he's in. He's in a college now in Tennessee. I knew him at Denver Seminary, and he's the only other person that I knew that went to the University of Kentucky.
Okay.
So I had to ask. I think he studied with Bradshaw, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you like about your current position? What do you not like about it?
Well, I love just about everything about it. I could go on and on. It's only 7 months. 7 months in. We've been working on the school for about 2 years in terms of laying the foundation, but we didn't launch until September. And so there was the kind of like before the school part. There's project management and there's vision, like writing documents of this is who we are, this is what we want to be. That stuff was really fun. That's where the Ph.D. training in terms of writing and in terms of building a big project was very relevant, and it's still very relevant because we're in year one of a big project. Maybe indefinite, and I know my role in it will be one window, so I have to sort of think of like the arch. I had my spreadsheet in grad school of like steps along the way to getting that PhD, and now I just have my steps along the way to establishing the school. And so I love the people interaction. I love the academic sort of vision casting we have to do. We're educating people on what classical education means, why it's important to learn Latin and Greek. We're educating people about the importance of rhetoric and logic, and how logic is not simply a subject you take as a freshman in college, but it's a It's a universal art that cultivated or educated people use all the time in every subject, right? You don't think logically about only logic. You think logically, hopefully, about everything, unless you're posting on Facebook. And so, we're trying to educate the parents who didn't get this kind of education. Obviously, I didn't up until age 18, so it's all catch up. But I love educating, parents now as well as students. I teach 2 classes.
That's key right there. That's key.
So
when did
I
you
get to be
realize
a
that
teacher.
key? When did you learn? When did you realize the parents really need to be captured somehow?
Well, just teaching. I mean, I started teaching, and all the problems that I had did not come from students. It came from parents. Parents who were giving their students a free pass not to do stuff, or
Yep.
contradicting what we said in class, right? So it's like, hey, we need to cooperate. And then at my last job, I would use the intentionally vague word culture to describe sometimes the family culture subverted the school culture, if that makes sense. And so I was like, what we need is we need to have the school culture permeate the family culture, or have families who already agree with the school culture come to the school so that we can form the whole person. Because me feeding your kid content and then sending them home to your family culture where that content is contextualized into like basically a worldly life, that's not doing anything.
And when are you going to be running for school board? Can you imagine
God,
we
no.
got people
Dude,
on the school board?
let the guy rest, for God's sake. He just got his Ph.D. and now he's
No
running
time
a
for
damn
rest. There's
school.
too much work.
He's doing a building project.
Can you imagine if we had school board people that actually thought this integratedly, this deeply? That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
It's tough. And the parents
Yeah.
aren't necessarily super excited that I'm bringing this stuff up, but I'm trying to make the case that, yeah, like this is a you problem,
Yeah.
If your kid doesn't read well in class, that's because you never read a book at home and you watch TV too much. Or you both work too much. This is getting very personal here. You two working parents, no time for the kids. The video game babysits the kids. And guess who? When I was a kid, video game meant sitting in front of the screen by yourself. Video games now mean you're on the internet with your 15 best buds, and you're playing a game and you're talking. And if you're not on YouTube, soaking in TikTok, soaking in all the worldly culture, I'll bet you they are, and they're informing you about it. So pretty quickly, playing video games for 2 hours a day makes you a worldly person.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Because my kids would always, early on, they would be, well, but this is how I'm being social. This is how I'm spending time with my friends. And so there's that struggle as a parent. I relate to that, there's that struggle. Yeah. It's like, well, you gotta go meet up in the woods. You gotta go meet up in person. You gotta do something in person. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, just because it's social doesn't mean it's actually good social time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like watching a movie with your friends. Like, are we really socializing? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, I talk all the way through the movie, so yeah. Like in Finding Nemo, I was like, they don't really talk. Fish don't talk. That's not what it sounds like when you talk underwater anyway. So this is just bullshit.
Your friends are looking at you like, you don't really get things, do you?
They're not really married. They're not really married. They're pretending. They met like 2 months ago on set. They're pretending. That's not their dog. They don't really live there. This is all fake. This is all bullshit. He didn't really die. No, he didn't die. I know it looks like it. He didn't die.
Yeah, but
so, I mean, but most people aren't doing that, right? And most people aren't socializing in the film. That when you, what strikes me about what you said about reaching out to parents and just, I mean, I'm holding back the expression that I want to say, but the basketballs that it takes for you to, these are your constituents, these are your customers. How you must have tremendous buy-in to,
that's right,
to feel like you have the ability to speak into their lives like that. I mean, it's obvious what you're saying is true, but most people would probably feel like they don't want to offend anybody.
Well,
So
and I certainly don't want to micromanage, and this is back to the whole, tyrannizing other people's behavior. If I could control, the parents' behavior, I probably would give into that temptation. So I'm trying to rhetorically persuade, right? I'm trying to make information available to them about the dangers of online addiction. Internet leads to, like, maybe video game addiction, which can lead to other darker addictions. I'm trying to, like, if your kid's not getting straight A's, I'm trying to just encourage them. Look, my domain here is the academics. They're not doing well in my domain. You need to figure out what it is. And so I'm trying to toe that line, but you're right. There's a ton of buy-in. This community is pre-existing, right? I'm new to this community, this church, and they have been planning to start a school for decades at this point. And so the people who are on board on the ground are incredibly dedicated. They've been in this long term. They're very patient with me. I'm a rookie headmaster. I've made, let's just say, a non-zero number of boneheaded mistakes. I won't say if that number reaches into the double digits or the triple digits at this point or not. I will just say that it's not zero. And they're patient with me. And also the priest who's on the board, he just tells me, hey, look, I said something about, I'm not sure I have the authority to say this. And he said, brother, authority comes from love and sacrifice. It doesn't come from position. People know that you love them and that you've sacrificed a lot to be here and to give to them. So you can say whatever you want. You can say hard things. And that gave me a lot of confidence that I did not have.
Mm.
say that one more time. Authority comes from love and
Authority
sacrifice.
doesn't come from position. Doesn't come from position. It comes from love and sacrifice. Think about the father. Like, I'm a dad of 4 kids. I want authority over my kids. I want them to listen to me. I want them to respect me, all that. But, if they're not listening to me and I get mad and I get less loving, they have less reason to listen to me, right? I'm actually, like, subverting my own authority. But if they feel the love and the sacrifice of time with them, especially, they don't really care that you go to work and provide food, put up food on the table. That's what you care about. They don't care. But if they feel the sacrifice of your love for them, then they care what you think and they want to do what you say, and that's a huge blessing.
What was the name of the priest that said that? I would just want to make sure I got the quote right, or quote accurately attributed.
Father Josiah Trenum. He's internet famous. He's controversial.
Josiah what? What's his last name?
Trenum, Trehnam.
If he's controversial, we'll probably be friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
he's a wonderful guy.
As opposed to all the other stuff that you're involved with, philosophy, the Orthodox Church, being on the
Meditation.
Republican Professor, K-12 education, masks, where everybody agrees on
4
everything.
Kids. That's right. Thank God. 4 kids. Yeah.
Philosophy. I mean, pretty much everybody agrees on that. You show up and you just learn, you read the books and you have which beliefs am I supposed to have? Oh yeah. Okay. Check them off. And you say, you have to sign a statement saying, I believe all these things. And then you get your PhD. That's
right. And you have to write a diversity, inclusion and equity statement.
Well, actually, yeah, that is one of the things that is. What do you think about the die? Jordan Peterson calls it diversity, inclusion, equity.
I love that. Yeah. I'm switching to, instead of DEI, it's DIE. I think it's great. Between die and woke, you have a really good sort of like symbolic representation of this movement. Wake up and die.
Well, you're an administrator, so you have to kind of, you have to have some view about it.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we aren't a conservative school. We're a traditional school. And sometimes tradition solves these problems before they start. We don't have to have a battle about it. But, I was really big into the news cycle and all the controversies and back in Gamergate, back in whatever it was, 2012 or 2015. And now I just sort of, I just enjoy being 2 steps removed from it. And I still watch, some conservative commentators and things like that. But
What was the
right
what
now,
was the what was the thing you mentioned? What gate? Something gate?
Gamergate was when gaming, which is traditionally a stronghold of men and often men who don't care about politics, right? Don't have a dog in the fight. That was when sort of feminism tried to make its incursion into video games, and there was a big uproar.
I missed that.
And if men,
I missed that
if
entirely.
boys, oh, it was fantastic. But it's happened. I basically think they've won. The diversity people, the die people, they've tried to make video games more woke, and they're trying to make Hollywood more woke. So
Did that
but when
did
men,
that did that have an impact on board games? Because that's where I would have felt it with like chess. Did it? They try to make more queens, or because I'm in the board game, so I missed that.
Never
Was it
played
only
slightly different.
You've never
Okay,
played
all right.
chess with 2 queens?
No, and I don't know what gender the horses are, because generally the pieces don't include those parts. They just have the head,
Oh, but
and
you're assuming that gender has to do with body parts, and that's
I am.
anti-trans. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people assume that. I mean, apparently, a lot of the people on the die side just assume it. It's funny. I catch NPR in it all the time. There was a recent one that I saw. It comes up in my memories where I'm commenting on their posts, but there was a CPR. The NPR has a great way of the nationalist public radio. Of course, they're not for nationalism, but they had this thing about CPR and the dummy or the body, and they were saying gender inclusive CPR training or something like that, and the body had breasts, and the way that they worded it was that the assumption was that was a woman, and I saw,
Right.
all I did was comment on it. I said, so gender is a matter of body parts. Interesting. And I had so much reaction just to that from the because it's a Democrat site and it's mainly Democrats that are commenting on it, and
but the people who
they
put,
just were outraged, but they were also, they couldn't understand where I was wrong. So
that's right. Well, the people who put breasts on a dummy and call it gender inclusive, they're like the C student who realizes the wind is turning one way.
That's right. That's right.
And they're trying to get their foot in there. Like, I also agree with Jana's interpretation of Shakespeare.
Yeah, that's a man who's been in many classrooms right there.
Yeah, everything's a student analogy for me. The student is the polis. It's the republic. You can find one of every kind.
That's a nerd. That's a nerd reference. Polis. What's that for everybody?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much to not modulate my nerdiness on your podcast. I haven't quite figured out your audience.
I will modulate it. If I will do the best I can. We need to leave a lot of it in there because that will attract the people that we want, which are insatiably curious people. They might not be highly educated in any kind of official piece of paper on the wall kind of a thing, but that's okay. I don't think that that's what really education is. I think you can get a great education with piece of paper on the wall if you're conscientious about it. I think you were, and I was, and I know that Curtis was, and lots of people are, and that's fine as long as you are conscientious about it. But there's a lot of people that never had an opportunity to do that, or they are just insatiably curious and they want to know what words you're using. And so I'm just trying to, they might already know. And then when you confirm what they know, they'll feel great.
Well, if we're doing the All Things Keith Buhler podcast, one of the things you mentioned in your Facebook comment was real estate and running. So you have to get to those two as well. Okay.
They're on my list.
Okay.
So polis is an ancient Greek term for a political community. Sometimes it's translated city. The most basic political community, unless you count the household, which I think the household is not really a political community, would you say?
That's right. I mean, you could say it's a mini polis, but I think that I'm persuaded by Plato on this one, that
Mhm.
the polis is the basic unit. It's composed of individuals and families. Like that's like the family is the sort of cell, you could say, but it's not the whole organism. The you need a bunch of cells to make an organism. The polis, which
Yes. Yeah.
I translate republic, right? Because I love Plato. I'm a Plato guy. The republic is the sort of like almost like the icon or the archetype of a human community. So I would say the church, for example, is the polis. The church is the human community in Christ. Christ is the head, where everyone has a part, where everyone belongs. Speaking of inclusion, everyone has a spot if you're repentant, and that we can be different and we can be unequal, but still be all valuable and valuable to each other, valuable in God's eyes. So that's what these die people really want, is they want to be in the church. God bless them. They think that you can for them, what is it? Repentance is admitting your racism. Um, contrition is being an anti-racist and committing every day despite your failures. They have the kind of the trappings of the church. They just don't have the right content.
Mm.
So may they find salvation.
Amen. Amen. That's a great little homily. Yeah, polis is the basic root word of like metropolis. You think of a city, or yeah, I like that. I like what you did with that. The household's important too, which is why I really like that. Aristotle starts with the household in politics.
Okay.
And that the household. That's why I think it's so important what you're doing with speaking into the household. It's not. I think people. It's very common to see people expect too much from a school.
Yes.
And also give the school too much credit for credits, maybe the wrong word, but a, we'll go with credit, but I mean attribute too much to the school in terms of how lost their kids are, or how dumb they are, basically.
Yeah. Oh, I
A
mean,
lot of it starts at home.
public schools are full of competent, motivated, capable teachers who are completely handicapped by the nature of their students. I mean, they can't expect them to read because they don't read at home. They can't expect them to do homework because they have no self-discipline and no parental oversight. They can't expect them to keep track of their own assignments because these kids are ADD and distractible. And a lot of ADD diagnosed or undiagnosed ADD is people with no attention span because they've never practiced, right? It's a behavioral thing you can get like 20% better or something like that with practice, even if you have ADD. So it's a mess. And what we're trying to do at this academy is excellent education, but when there are issues that are outside of our purview as teachers, address them on their front, address them at home, address them with as a relational, something good. Again, having a priest be on the board means I can escalate conflicts that are emotional or vision conflicts. I can escalate them to the level of, hey, we're starting to resent each other. We're having this conflict and it's starting to get emotional and we're starting to get frustrated. What we really need to do is we need to forgive, right? We need to stop, calm down, forgive, make peace, and then we can address the issue. That whole idea of making peace first before you solve the problem, that right there turns a culture around. It makes things so much easier, so much better. And then we do get to the vision. We do resolve the problem. But having the priest there to be able to say, hey, this is a spiritual problem, cut it out, that's been invaluable.
That's awesome.
And I think, this is where I'm going to gently tread in the direction of a criticism of Protestantism. This is where, a Protestant
You can
pastor,
unleash. Don't be gentle. It's fine.
okay.
I mean, I'm
Well,
I'm Protestant. I have very thin skin on Protestantism. Just kidding. But I
Yeah,
want to learn. I
yeah.
love church history. That was one of the that was probably my favorite thing I took it as an undergrad at
Mhm.
Wayland Baptist University in Hawaii. And I love church history as a graduate student. I took it um, a couple times doing my seminary training. And
Mhm.
so you have full free. I'm fully aware of the Orthodox tradition, and I feel like probably a lot of the people listening, especially if they're listening on audio, they
Yeah,
can't see you.
right.
And so a lot of the Orthodox tradition is just presented in your appearance to me. I mean, you're either a rabbi and I can't see the back of your head, or you are, you know, Orthodox probably to me.
working on the Orthodox beard. Yeah.
But you've mentioned it several times. So yeah, unleash, feel free.
Well, so this is not per se a criticism of Protestantism. It's more of a criticism of the current iteration of the way evangelical churches have built out, which is that, like you said, the pastor, he's treating his flock, if he's a mega church pastor, he's treating his flock as constituents and customers who have other options, right? Who, if he says something um, that doesn't tickle their fancy, they can just bounce, they can leave, and those are line items in the budget. Um, and so I think that makes it a lot harder to speak into people's lives, to be harsh in a loving way, say the hard thing. So that's just all I was saying is we have this buy-in as a community, and um, even when it gets hard, we have the person with the real authority to tell people stop, and they're not going to leave. I had this one really hard conversation where I just thought, oh man, this person's going to leave. Like, we're being so hard on them. We're drawing such a hard line. And you know what? They're still here. And we just did our forgiveness vespers, which is the beginning of Lent. We all gather in the church, pray together, and then we go around in a concentric circles and ask for forgiveness individually from every single person in the church. You get down on your knees and you say, forgive me, a sinner, and they say, God forgives. It's so powerful. And I did this for my kids. I did this for my wife. I did this for all of my employees who go to the church here, and including those people who we're having these hard conflicts with. We just hug it out, we cry it out, and we forgive each other. And are we going to have another fight? Probably, but we're going to have another reconciliation.
I like that. That's really cool.
Keith, you said that you got a PhD in philosophy and it took 5 years. Do you feel like you would have done that again? Knowing everything you know now, would you go back and do that over again?
100%.
What was the thing about it that you felt was most beneficial?
There was a lot of things. Coincidentally, in my personal life, my wife and I had just gotten married. We were able to move away from both of our families and become a family unit. We did our own Christmases together because we couldn't afford to fly home, and we had to make community. So that was a huge part of it, which I know is not specific to graduate school. We could have flown out of state to get a job or something. The job experience, the teaching experience, teaching adults, legal adults, and just being able to dedicate myself to one thing. I am ADD. I was talking about ADD earlier. I have ADHD or something, attention deficit. Hey, look, a squirrel disorder. And so, being able, I've always started projects. Like, if you look at my unfinished projects list on my hard drive, but this is my job. I have to finish having this one project you have to finish. It takes years. Is an formative experience. I learned a lot. I wrote a lot. And so I would say for me, it's the formation. It's not just the credentialing, which has been helpful to be a headmaster. People they don't think twice when Dr. Buhler is the headmaster.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's probably smart. It's basically what that means to them. They don't ask me, tell me about Aristotelian neo-naturalism. Like, how does that work? so I did my dissertation on Aristotle and contemporary forms of Aristotle, and no one really cares about that other than other academics.
I do, yeah.
But
Well,
it was still helpful.
what was your favorite class that you took over in the UK?
Favorite class. I enjoyed my Plato classes with Eric Sanday. He approaches Plato from a very different angle to the one that I had used before. So that was kind of like seeing Plato fresh. I'd probably say my favorite class was this class with Bradshaw on naturalism. Just thematizing the concept of nature for a whole semester, the varieties of naturalism, which is an essay by John McDowell, if memory serves, or it's people who claim to be naturalists, right? Claim that nature is all there is, ever was, and will be. But then when they realize,
in other words, naturalism excludes God, right?
It excludes God, excludes the supernatural, excludes the soul, and excludes Plato's forms.
Anything that's not material, anything that's not natural.
Well, so that's exactly where the naturalists among themselves, they're having an in-house argument. They start to argue about, well, not everything is material, right? Like numbers and maybe forms are real, maybe natures are real, like the things that science studies. The science doesn't study every individual goose. It studies the nature of goose, right? And it studies mammals, which there's never been a physical, living, breathing mammal ever in the history of the world. There's only been dogs and cats and so on. Mammal is an abstract concept. So yeah, naturalism attempts to
Is that what you meant by forms? Is that what you meant by forms? So if somebody listening heard forms, and they might not know what you mean by that.
Yeah, so natural forms would be like just a kind of dog, not any individual dog.
It's an idea? Is it kind of like an idea? Would you say it's a concept?
I would not say it's a concept.
Okay, explain the difference between concepts and ideas.
So concepts are in your head, and ideas are real, but they aren't necessarily just in your head.
Concepts are in your head. You mean they're in my brain or in the blood?
I do think your mind is located spatially where your brain is, but no, they're not primarily in your brain. They're known by your mind, or they're thought up by your mind. I can come up with a new concept from scratch, but ideas in the Platonic sense they pre-exist me, and they're there whether I'm thinking about them or not. And that's
before Adam and Eve, there were forms or ideas, but there were no human concepts until Adam and Eve got there and had thoughts in their minds. Phenomenologically, they're in your head, I guess. They feel like they're in your head. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. If there's the terrain and there's the map. The terrain is the forms themselves, and the map is our concepts.
And do you believe that the mind is the same thing as the brain, or is it ultimately
I think
is it separable from the brain?
The mind has properties the brain does not have, so they can't be the same thing. The mind is a single unitary thing, and the brain is a collection of many things. That's my summary of J2's argument.
It's funny how I was kind of humorous. It's humorous to me listening to philosophers talk, because you can't get away from, or anybody talk. You can't get away from ideas and forms. I mean, we're talking about the brain and the mind as if there's one of them. And right. Which one are we talking about? The brain. Oh, the brain. Oh, mine's over here. Yours is over there. Yeah. Which one is the brain?
If you want to criticize forms, you have to gather them all together into one form and say, forms, those things aren't real.
Yeah. That's great. This is really nerdy, and it's going to be a great joy for certain nerds out there, or certain wannabe nerds. Awesome. So we wanted to get to real estate, running, and optimism. And I had to make sure I did optimism, because I think one of my last interactions with you was, I think it was puzzling to me a little bit about how optimistic you were. No, I wouldn't say puzzling. I was curious.
Mhm.
I was, because you do seem to be insatiably optimistic, and I don't know,
Yeah.
is that a spiritual discipline or are you naturally like that? Tell us about
Well,
optimism for
yeah.
you.
Okay. Yeah. So I do think optimism is a spiritual discipline. It's the in God's real world, in the objective world, all is well. And if I feel like things are going badly, or I'm upset, or my wife is not doing this or that thing, or my students are being this or that way, that problem comes from me. Like they might be doing something wrong in the real world, but I don't need to be bothered by it. And so that's the sort of like the power of the mind, right? The power of our filtration process. The world comes to me and I turn it into something that I need to feel anxious about. An example of this would be the recent war in Ukraine. And I use the word war loosely because I'm not sure it is a war yet. It's some kind of conflict. But I wasn't reading the news that week. And so I didn't hear about it. I felt nothing. The war objectively was still happening. And yet I wasn't upset about it because I didn't know anything about it. People who are reading about it, who, by the way, have nothing to do with the war, have no dog in the fight. I mean, maybe they can pray. They were starting to feel upset about it. I have friends who are like, yeah, my kids are really anxious about the war in Ukraine. Like, why should your kid have any feeling about this whatsoever? It's probably because of the way you're talking about it. So that's just an example
Yes, exactly.
of our pessimism, if you want to call it that, our negativity.
It's the same thing with the masks and making your kids wear masks.
Mhm.
I can't believe it's still happening. It's just crazy. I mean, the anxiety that these kids have, and I think deep down the kids know it's BS. I mean, they have to,
Yeah.
That's right.
but they feel like they have to
That's right.
perform.
But they absorb the anxiety in the air that
Yeah.
we're sort of emitting. So in that sense, it's I grew up. I think my disposition is sort of sunny. I think I was a happy kid according to my siblings, but I grew up in a household with a lot of negative thinking, and anxiety, and these patterns are daily. It's a daily battle to reprogram myself. But you get programmed as a kid, and then as an adult, you get to program yourself however you want, and refashion your habits and reform yourself, so to speak, with God's help. So the negativity, I would say, is very much nurture, and the positivity is somewhat nature. But then it just becomes like you have to be positive. Say something bad happens, you literally look at the bright side. What possible good thing could come out of it? And if you can't find anything, you remember the Bible verse, the powerful verse, that God chastens those whom He loves. Oh, this is a gift from God for my benefit, even though it's hard, even though I don't see any other benefit. So I just choose to believe on principle that God is doing good things for me and for the entire world, and that some of them hurt, like sickness, or like my kids not getting doing what I want, not getting my way, or my marriage being hard, taking work, my job being hard. All these things are gifts from God, and if you choose to adopt that perspective, then it looks to the outside like optimism.
Let me press into the choosing a little bit, because it seems to me that you have an emotional experience. You had an experience with God in the past, or maybe it's ongoing. I don't know, but there's some kind of basis for your choice that gives you confidence, and it's not just an intellectual cognitive thing like you read it in the Bible and you go, oh, okay, therefore I can choose this. There's
Yeah.
something else there. There's a confidence that's cellular almost. It feels like it's I'm speaking metaphorically, obviously, but it's really deep for you. You have this confidence that God loves you. Is that an experience in your life that you've had? What grounds that for you?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm getting a text here. Yeah, it's been many experiences. Some bigger experiences like that I could name, like one at the vineyard, where I felt like the Holy Spirit just came and just comforted me. And one I did like a it's called breakthrough or impact training, where you literally lean back in the arms of everybody in the room, these people you've done this training with, and they hold you and they sway you gently like this, and you're laying on their arms. And I felt so loved. I felt it was love and surrender, right? When we don't feel love, it's because we maybe don't feel fully known. So it's like, yeah, you like me, but if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. But if I feel fully known and fully loved, that's going to leave a mark. And so I've had that experience with my wife. Even when we were dating, you pull a card out and you go, this is true about me. You kind of hide it again. And you see, like, is she still there? Is she going to run away? And she was doing the same thing for me. And so we've had these experiences of being known and still being loved that have been very healing for both of us. But so then with God,
That makes it easier to choose then, when you were talking about choosing to be optimistic.
It does. I mean, it's chicken and egg, because
yeah,
I mean, this was also from Dr. Puff, where he just said, like, literally, like, if you stop worrying, nothing will go wrong. Like, you feel like your worry is protecting you from all these bad things. If you just stop worrying, literally nothing bad will happen. You might suffer pain, but it's not the kind of the worries. The worry is telling you you're going to be annihilated. The worry is telling you you're going to be ground into a worthless piece of nothing. And that's never going to happen. It's just literally never going to happen. And so
the worry doesn't protect you. So
we're hard pressed, but we're not crushed. Yeah.
Yes. We're hard pressed and we're not crushed. And just when you think you're going to die, he lets up. God knows our limits. So I've had that experience of falling back and saying, let's just try it. Someone I trust said this. I'm going to take the risk to believe it, even though I haven't experienced it yet. And then, boom, I was like,
do you do that? Do you give that experience to your students and the people there at the school, so that they can freely help them choose? Because I think some of these people might be listening and think, this guy just has extra serotonin in his brain. That's what's happening here. And, he's talking about choosing this, but really that's how people talk who have serotonin in their brain. But
yeah, no, I have a very tough life. I'm still in counseling. I still struggle with things. So it's like, it's more of an ongoing choice and a battle. And it's what I struggle with when I'm talking to my students, for example, is that they do jump to the conclusion that you're talking about, that, oh yeah, you're a cheerful person or something like that. And it's hard to communicate, like, this is work.
That's a key thing right there. You mentioned that about ADD too. And you said you have ADD, but you can improve and you can work out of it to some extent.
Yes.
So that's also with
a large
optimism.
Extent.
Okay.
That's right. I think that as much as you think medication will do for you, you can do that much on your own without medication.
Wow.
And medication has downsides, right? Whereas meditation doesn't. It has like positive downsides: lower blood pressure, better sleep, more calmness. So I'm trying to work that into my coaching and teaching of my students, but they always kind of look at me sideways, like, what are you talking about?
What does this have to do with running? I have a feeling something about running is a connection here. You started long distance running?
Yes, I started walking in 2017.
I remember those
and then
posts,
that led to some light jogging. But
okay, so you're not just like a crazy runner out of your mom's womb or something. You're a fully developed adult. You have a Ph.D. and you're like, oh yeah, I can't run right now. I gotta start with one foot in front of the other.
That's right.
Walking.
And
okay. How long did you walk?
It was about 2 miles. So it was about a mile to a beautiful lake, and then kind of a half mile around the lake, and then maybe a mile back, so 2.5 miles. And this became a daily thing, and it was so nice. It was actually motivating. It was like, I like going to the lake. I like listening to this certain music, right? I was listening to like EDM, like dance music. I like this energy. And then I would do a podcast on the walk back, which was also something. I don't listen to my podcast if I don't go for my run, so I have to go for my run. And that just led to kind of more and more.
What kind of podcast was it?
That was a very small Jewish man called Ben Shapiro.
Oh, okay. So this is politics and stuff, something that maybe people would like to avoid if they want to have low blood pressure.
That's right. I
Okay.
now do less politics. I do the Dr. Puff podcast called the Happiness Podcast, and I do real estate. I do daily scripture reading, just about every day on a walk or a run.
What real estate podcast do you listen to?
Mi favorito, my favorite one is Passive Real Estate Investing with Marco Santarelli.
Passive real estate investing. Okay.
It's just little nuggets, one piece at a time. It's nothing grand, but you learn something every time, and you add them up together, you start to get a picture of how real estate works.
And do you have did you have like a huge chunk of cash from your parents and that's why you got interested in real estate? Or is this like what running? You started walking and you're like now running like, half a marathon or whatever.
That's right. Yeah, I ran my first marathon in November.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So yeah, it took 4 years, you could say, of training. I wasn't planning to run a marathon, but exactly what you're saying, just the slow, steady increase. And that's this book, Atomic Habits, which my family is all getting into right now.
Say the name of the book again. What was it?
I believe it's Atomic Habits, as in atomic bomb.
Okay.
Atomic Habits. You take one habit at a time, and you do. I kid you not. The reason people don't do this is it sounds too easy. You do the most minimum. I wrote on my Facebook wall how to run a marathon and still be lazy. Walk.
Yes, that was a
50
very
minutes a day.
compelling post. I thought that's very catchy. You should write a book about that.
All right. I think I will, because it's a hot topic right now, and people really are doing it wrong because they think it has to be hard, right? They go to the gym and kill themselves.
Yes.
Don't want to go back tomorrow because they're too sore, and
Mhm.
pretty soon they're not in the habit, and so the gym membership is just passive income for the gym people. But if you do the simplest, easiest, almost embarrassingly dumb thing, like walking for 5 or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but you do it every day. The only part where the discipline comes in is you have to do it every day. If it's raining, if you're tired, if you're hungover, if you didn't sleep, if your kids need you, you still have to do it. You have to do your 5 minutes, your 10 minutes, your 15 minutes. And a big part of this journey for me was when my wife said I was coming back home. I wasn't running in the morning, but I knew by this point, this was a couple years in, I knew how important the running was for me mentally. And I wasn't running in the morning because school had started. And I was like, I have to run in the afternoon during family time, or else I'm not going to run at all. And my wife said, Keith, you're a better person after your run. Do your run. I'm giving you permission to like let go of the family time, which of course is very precious to me.
That's huge.
And so I would 30 minutes, an hour, I come back, still have some family time, but my mentality was so much better. I solved problems on my run. I listened to my podcast on my run. I listened to music and I stopped thinking on my run because I'm solving problems all day.
Yeah.
And so it's really a powerful time. And of course, I've read, since experiencing this change that exercise and meditation have done in my life, I've read about things like exercise can basically cure depression, like as much as medication. Much as medication, exercise can reduce depression. So, it's not like you have to use it or you don't have, but wouldn't that be nice if you could have all the benefits of depression, antidepressants, with no side effects?
Praise God.
Yeah. So,
so Keith,
that's how running ties in.
With real estate, and was your interest in real estate spawned on by your podcast and running? How did you get into real estate, and what kind of real estate do you do?
Yeah. So, my students are asking about me. So I started, I've always been interested in real estate, like a lot of people are, just casually. But when we moved to Kentucky, we bought a house for $4,000 on an FHA loan. It was a $100,000 duplex. We put 4% down, basically.
That's great.
Yeah, and I didn't know about this, but who I have since given many, many shout outs. Mitch Berry in Southern California here. He just said, hey, get a duplex and rent out one side. We did that. And that's when I got my first sort of taste of, hey, and then we, at this FHA, you have to live in it for a certain amount of time. After we moved out,
right,
I'm getting a paycheck essentially from this house that I own without doing any extra work. I have
What
to
a
go light
concept.
the,
Yeah.
I have to go light the pilot light, stuff like that. But I mean, once you taste it, it's like, why, how can I do more of this?
Hmm.
And so we got our second duplex just basically 10 minutes away in Kentucky from a long distance. So we're still in California, but we're buying in Kentucky. We got that one in 2020 because my wife had started working, and she made about 15,000 in the year. We put about 15,000 on another down payment in Kentucky, which those of your listeners who are in California know is about 1% of a California home. So since 2020 to now, taking baby steps, I'm working on acquiring my 7th property.
7th?
Yeah.
Atomic Habits.
Wow.
Atomic
In 2
Habits.
years? In 2 years, you did that many properties?
Yeah, went from 1 to 6. I have 6 right now, and they're because of their duplexes.
During the
I actually
pandemic.
have,
During the public
right.
health panic, I should say.
Yeah, I just didn't care so much about that, and just went for my runs and called people and tried to buy houses. So we have 12. I think we have 10 units right now. We'll have 11 to get the 7th property at the end of the month.
Your dad was on the radio, right? Was he famous? Your dad?
Yeah, Rich Buhler. Yeah, he was a talk show host, writer, and he was a pastor for a while. He was in news for a while, but he's most well known for his talk show, Talk from the Heart.
Talk from the Heart. Okay.
I grew up listening to that.
I had not heard it. Somebody mentioned it to me, and I was like, "Oh, I'll ask him about that." If they go, "Is that the same Buhler as this guy?"
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
You can read all about his, we're republishing his books at richbuhler.com, and we're posting some of his audio and audio content, stuff like that, just to keep his legacy alive and make it available for maybe a new generation.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
He was a great teacher. Yeah.
Well, I wish I would have had you had that on my radar earlier. I could have looked at his stuff and asked you more about it. But I know that you have to go, and we really appreciate your time this morning, Dr. Buhler. Say hi to your kids for us,
Thank you.
your students, and thank them for letting us borrow you for a few extra minutes.
Absolutely.
I shall. And thanks so much for thinking of me and having me on, Lucas. It's an honor. And Curtis, I'm going to go back and catch up on the episodes that I haven't heard yet. But it's been an honor.
It would be great to have
There's no pictures. There's no pictures on the audio, just for you Orthodox. We need to.
Okay. Shadow puppets, nothing. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Keith. And we look forward to maybe doing another episode where we can dig further into some of this stuff that we've broached today. If you want to do that later on, maybe when you're not as busy over the summer.
I'm in. Name the time. Thanks so much.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
See you, brother.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.